kept my mouth shut for 25 years.
Now that you're back, I want you to go to Tulsa.
Not exactly the welcome I was expecting. What crew runs this neighborhood?
No crew up in here. We're in the middle of nowhere.
I'll protect you from the gangs.
What gangs?
Sit down!
You got a pretty good appetite for someone who was just shot at.
Tulsa King. New series streaming November 13th, exclusively on Paramount+.
I love Montana, but I'm doing this for our family.
They will fight you dirty.
Is there any other way?
Ruin them, starting with her.
Signing this is a declaration of war. We're already at war. I do this for my father. I don't do this for me.
We give everything to this land. And I do mean everything.
Yellowstone 2-hour premiere event, Sunday at 8 on Paramount Network.
Reveille, donks.
Look at us now, tip to tip. This is our life. This is our passion. That's the spirit we bring to this show.
I'm Luke Thomas.
I'm Brian Campbell.
This is Morning Kombat.
All righty then. Fight week, UFC 281. Luke Thomas, Brian Campbell of Morning Kombat with your instant reaction to what was whole hum, more of the same from the press conference. We got some stare downs ahead of Saturday's loaded card at Madison Square Garden. We got some scumbag MMA media questions. Luke Thomas, did you learn anything from what we just saw at MSG?
The only serious thing or reasonable thing I can take from that was that the English-speaking media clearly had not had a lot of opportunities to talk to Alex Pereira. So I thought he got the majority of the questions. He seemed to be the most invested in the process.
Poetan.
What
does that mean?
I'm not sure.
Angry fish or something?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's what the word I don't know means.
Yeah,
I have no idea. So, there's a little bit there. He seemed to be very focused, ready for the opportunity, dressed extravagantly like he was in a nightclub in 1984 in Miami.
Yeah, first of all, okay, look, part of this press conference, part of us reacting to big fight week press conferences is, did we learn anything more that adds to the fights? Were we entertained? And you're usually not entertained. I can respect that this isn't your setting. But sometimes it's who won those with the trash talk. Who won it style-wise? I mean, we saw Dan Hooker in sweatpants. We saw Izzy in like a starter jacket.
I think
saw
Hooker
Poetan
and Izzy both had Crocs on.
And we saw Poetan dressed like he was a bad guy in a nightclub in Scarface, and I was kind of here for
it. That's the most dolled up I've ever seen him. I could put it that way. So he was there for the moment. I will say Carla Esparza presented herself well. Zhang Weili just showing up in a motherfucking tracksuit and calling it a day.
I love it. People booed the shit out of Carla. We'll get to that in a second. But Jose Young's Cosby sweater, are you in on that? Or
with the sunflowers?
Yeah,
not for me.
It was aggressive considering Bill's history.
By the way, I did notice something. They showed the video of Oscar from The Mac Life. They showed Jose from MMA Fighting.
I think I saw Mike Bone in there.
Did they show video of him?
I may have missed it. His voice.
They didn't show video of hardly anyone else asking questions.
That was odd.
It could be because the vast majority of those who did ask questions, not name those other people, asked a bunch of bullshit.
My favorite question that kept coming up is, do you think you'll win? That was good. That's a good one.
Dude, my favorite is the BR betting guy being like, hey, Izzy.
I got a parlay on you, Izzy.
Parlay.
Think you're winning?
Can you say with absolute confidence you're gonna win? Get this fucking guy out of the building.
These are the moments when I go, you know what? I don't always agree with Dana, but him talking about us fucking scumbag MMA media members, he's kind of, as a whole, percentage-wise, I think he's right.
Dude, the industry has drummed out anyone who tried to do the job seriously. So all that's left are people who are like us, just two washed pieces of shit. And then fucking scrubs who don't know what they're doing, who don't care to do a good job, who don't ask good questions, who don't give a fuck about what any of these are supposed to be about. That's who's here now. So,
all right, our main event face-off. We get our first look at the face-offs, which I like these type of moments. I gain a little bit from this. Main event, Adesanya, Poetan. I liked it. It looked like Pereira a little bit taller than him, a little bit bigger. That was interesting. You don't typically see that with Izzy's height and reach. But intensity, you saw Alex's abs jumping through that open shirt. I wasn't rock hard with emotion, but for this event offering us not much, I was into that moment.
I'll say this. Izzy said to me yesterday, like one of the things you took from therapy, and he said to learn how to respond, not react.
Yes, I like that.
And I did notice that there were times when Alex was trying to like bait him or just say something incendiary, granted through a translator, which makes it hard, and then Izzy just wouldn't react. He would just kind of let it go. So I did see a little bit of change with that. I feel like in previous fights, he might have been like against Brunson or something. He might have been baited to respond. Didn't really respond here this time. So that was new. That was different. And as I mentioned, Poatan having hardcore energy ready for this one. He looked like he was ready to go.
We actually got very little trash talk between the main eventers heading into this. I was finally cheering at the end when at least Adesanya was like, and I'm going to come out here and take care. Like it was finally was at least talking like, I'm going to handle you, talk your shit. You did knock me out. You should be talking your shit. But it was fairly tame. The fight will be what it will be. I'm still super excited about it. As we transition to that co-main though, I unfortunately wasn't surprised that Carla Esparza got booed the way she did, because this has become a theme that people are
so over the
people
top,
are just
man.
like dismissing her, shitting on her, and blaming her, it seems, for everything that had to do with that rematch with Rose when she won the title earlier this year. Were you surprised though on the flip side? Dude, this is New York City, and Zhang Weili from China is like a conquering hero returning here. This is the same arena she lost to Rose a year ago in their title rematch. But if you take that performance mixed with what she did in the rematch with Joanna, certainly I can understand why Weili's a favorite here, why a lot of people are talking about her winning, but I didn't expect the American fans to be like all over her in this regard.
Yeah, that is surprising. I knew that she was well-liked, and I certainly knew she was more well-liked than Carla. I did not know that the difference was this stark, that it was, and again, part of it is that they do like Zhang Weili, but that they just really loathe Carla, at least right now as it stands. I will tell you, here's the thing. Like, obviously, like when a fan base like this responds to a fighter who doesn't speak their language, what would be the reason why they would sign on to them? It's because that the way in which they fight and the fights that they've had have been scintillating, have been incredible, have been important and historic, and you name it. She has brought them that. So if you can go to another market and not speak their language at all, and then still get them eating out of the palm of your hand in the way that she is, it tells you a lot about the quality of her fights.
I agree with you on that. Not a lot of back and forth in terms of juiciness between the ladies. They'll have to settle that, of course, in the cage. You can believe that none of this bullshit matters. I try to take any nugget I can out of here, but Gaffney Pereira, our fine producer, just hit me up with the Poatan background. So where Pereira comes from in Brazil, they speak a native language called Po, and then Atan, this is according to Sportskeeda, which of course is one of the most trusted MMA websites in the game. It can be translated to stone hands. So like stone. So it's basically like hands of stone.
He's Roberto Duran.
Basically, and I think the power shows you that. All right, Luke, we didn't learn a lot from those two matchups, but Michael Chandler and Dustin Poirier did give a little bit of back and forth. Do you take anything from the reiteration and the questions that were asked to Chandler that this time around isn't about, I'm going to be here for a good time, not a long time. It was about must win, baby. Michael Chandler has been the one championing his cause that a victory could put him into a title shot opposite Islam Makhachev. They asked Dustin about the exact verbiage of Chandler. Dustin, does that lead you to believe Michael will actually try to wrestle you? And of course, Poirier just said, look, he better try to wrestle him, because if not, I'm going to knock him out. Do you take something in from that? Do you think that could be part? Is this a new Michael Chandler from the standpoint of he just gave us all the highlight reel moments we would want from him in his UFC, 4-fight debut? Now is it time to win this championship?
I am pretty sympathetic to that, actually. I think he really might try. The only issue is not that he might go in there with every intention, and certainly even early in the fight, fighting strategically and not, still being Michael, but not being super crazy. But the problem is, like, if it ends up being at all a striking affair, can he get baited into one? Yeah, he definitely can.
Right.
Now, if the wrestling is coming easy for Chandler, if he's getting the takedowns when he needs to, he's able to maintain top control, honestly, he might fight like a very straightforward fight in that way.
So I was surprised by that, because he may go that route for Chandler, to look to be a little bit safer. And maybe he learned from the Tony fight where he actually got tagged a bit because he's Michael Chandler and he makes crazy moments early in a fight. I was surprised, though, to hear that, because would you argue that it is Poirier who could better benefit potentially from trying to fight from distance and being a little bit more strategic, when yet it was Poirier during this press conference saying, just like the other fights, I'm prepared to leave a piece of myself in there. You want a fight of the year, you want a big moment, knockouts, come and get this in the first round. I'm a little bit surprised that we're talking about, is Chandler the one that could play it safe in this matchup?
Play it safe, I don't know. I don't think he's got play it safe DNA in him. But I do think...
Shouldn't Poirier be looking to play it a little more safe? Because Chandler's such a fast starter that is this the right mindset for Poirier to be telling everybody, I'm coming in there guns blazing?
I just feel like if in the fights where Chandler has kind of ridden guys out to decision, there has been some, of course, striking on the feet, but the common denominator is that he was able to, again, in the who's the guy that beat him in New York City with the Primus? So in the Primus rematch, in the Goichi Yamauchi fight, you just saw him really lean on his wrestling as a way to control, slow the fight. I don't think he's got a real good way to slow down and control the fight with his striking. It's just his striking isn't built for that. He doesn't do that kind of thing. So it's just a question of what works in the fight and what doesn't.
Do you think Chandler took on this revelation after watching Oliveira wear down Poirier in round 2 using wrestling?
Could be. And also, I just think it's a recognition of self. What is he, 35, 36?
Yeah, 36.
36. I mean, dude, you just don't have much time. 36 at lightweight is fucking getting up there. And while I don't think their performance has dropped off, I think they all know that in a year or two, it most definitely will. If you're going to get a title, if you're going to make the big fights, if you're going to do it, it is right fucking now.
I think that is something to watch because of how automatic, like when Chandler took on Gaethje a year ago in the same arena, we're just like, oh, dude, this is, fight of the night.
Everyone always
fight
says
of the year.
They know what's going to happen on a fight now. You have no fucking idea.
It's going to be a banger. What if Chandler starts shooting? I mean, I'm more obliged to believe sooner or later it's going to become a war and they're both going to be willing participants because that's who they are and that's what they do. But something to watch for if we learned anything about this matchup moving forward. Up and on down the card, Frankie Edgar was on the stage. All 5 main bout cards were represented during this presser. He is going to take on the retirement opportunity against Chris Gutierrez. The face-off, a little salt and pepper back and forth between them. But you and I echoed the same thing. Man, we love Frankie. But he looked kind of old up there. He
looked old. And I say that as someone who looks old as shit. I mean, look at me.
Yeah.
Look at me. Could I look more ancient? I look pathetic. And I know that about myself.
But are you taking active steps to change that?
Not enough. But the point I want to make was, God, Frankie looked old. My man looked fucking old. He just looked like he'd been wearing it. As they say in parts of the South, look, he'd been ridden hard and put away wet.
All right. He got to this point where it's like, okay, if he's going to fight again, it will be a retirement bout by losing to very good fighters. I mean, you saw the knockout losses, wins in between, but the knockout losses to Ortega, to Cheeto Vera by front kick. It's been brutal. He's now at a point where, okay, it's time to stop throwing him at those guys. It's time to walk away and make exit plans. But we've argued in the past, specifically Anderson Silva's couple-year exit plan, where the UFC doesn't always give the fighters who've done great for them and are beloved the right ending opportunity. This fight doesn't really mean anything. Sure, for Chris Gutierrez, who, by the way, is like 6-0-1 in his last 7, this is an opportunity to get a serious name on there in a fight he's favored to win. But wouldn't you have preferred Frankie versus Dom or something like...
We never got that one.
Something
that was the big one we never got.
Like, it's tough to complain here because Frankie, in basically his backyard, Toms River, New Jersey, Madison Square Garden here, he's going to get a chance to go out on his own terms, and hopefully for Frankie, he can bring the fight one more time and win or lose, not get stopped and be respected, right? At this point, that's what you're asking for. But just wouldn't this be better against insert aging name? You know what I mean? Wouldn't
better
Tony Ferguson?
Better for who?
At lightweight? I don't know, something here.
Better for who?
For Frankie, because that's what it's about.
But not for UFC. Because they're trying to build up anybody they can because they, Because
that's we feed all old to our young. It's a cyclical.
Dude, if you're UFC and you make for his last, I'm not saying making his last fight against Dom Cruz, if they had done that, would have been some kind of crime. But like, if you believe that Chris Gutierrez is going to win, or who is Blanchfield fighting on the Molly Meatball? Like, she's still young too, but I mean, you are trying to find these like diamonds in the rough. You've got to feed them circumstances and names by which, if they can overcome them, they can use this to great acclaim. Frankie's last fight, giving him to another aging legend, that's good for you. It's good for me. It's good for those two guys.
Frankie too.
It's not good for UFC, and since UFC has the predominant amount of control.
Okay, but it's good for UFC potentially if Gutierrez, who might have a better recent record than people realize, even though he's yet to consistently draw the big names and get them, this could be an opportunity to open that door. Are people actually excited about this fight? I would say people are apprehensive about this fight because of Frankie's fighting a game opponent who's favored to beat him and maybe even stop him. I just feel like fans would have much more interest in a Frankie versus, Jose Aldo's not around anymore and they already fought twice, but that type of level, like a Jose Aldo, a Dom.
There's no question. Yes. If they had done, there was this card is historically significant for Frankie Edgar. It's not uniquely interesting, the fight itself. It's more just like, hey, we're finally at the end of the line. What does it all mean? It by itself is not that interesting. Although I will say, dude, Chris Gutierrez is a good fighter. I expect the fight to be fun. I don't think it's going to be a bad fight. But you're right. Like, there was a lot of different ways to curry fan favor on this one, and they explicitly chose not to. So,
final bout of the main card is Dan Hooker back at lightweight against, is it Claudio Puelles?
You could say Puelles.
Puelles.
You could say Puelles, or if you're Argentinian, Puelles.
I like when people who haven't been on the dais before for a press conference get the chance. We didn't really get much of him in the end. They didn't ask him a lot. I did like the way he looked. He came out looking good in a suit.
Dude, the kid speaks English. He looks good. He can fight his ass off again. 2 knee bars in a row, 2 knee bar victories in the UFC. And Dan Hooker, man, this is a one. If he, if you could beat a guy like Dan Hooker, like you can see by the way he carries himself, by the way he presents himself. Remember, he called out asking for an assignment for UFC Espanol to do commentary. He got it. And here he is wearing this nice suit, showing up on stage, answering questions, being eager. Dude, he wants this spot bad. Dan shows up wearing fucking camo and Crocs. He's like, been here, done that,
Yeah, Dan looks like he's on the way to snowboard with that jacket.
But you can tell how much this means to Claudio. You can tell how much that he really is just trying to do everything he wants, or he can, I should say, to get ahead. Tough fight, obviously, on Saturday, but he is trying to make sure every T crossed, every I dotted.
We could do another 25 minutes on how
about
I guess lame the media is and the events here. But let's take a moment. But that's
this is why I don't like going to those.
Okay,
things.
so and people know that you hate it, and people that watched it get what they should have hated on. So here's my question to you. I'm going to ask you to find a middle ground that works for everybody, because here's the deal. You've always said from the beginning, this is not journalism, this is a pep rally. And it is. This event is meant to have the fans there, the press conferences and cheering and going nuts. It's meant to have trash talkers that are going to play up the potential violence and the acrimony between them. So when it's done under the guise of random media member, whether you're a goofball media member or a quote unquote real one, I always try to ask questions that potentially stir the pot, right? That potentially get somebody talking bad about the other person down the line. We get too many in the direction of like, I'm selling this Bitcoin, so here's my chance to do it. Or what do you eat for breakfast? Or what's your favorite thing to do as a dad? Things that just don't belong during fight week.
What's your favorite color?
What's the in between for you? How would you improve those so that it's something that you actually wouldn't mind being at? Because you would agree with me that when guys are trading funny barbs and trash talking and threatening to jump across at each other, and then you get the stare down, that's meant to get everybody juiced up, including us. It gets us fired up, right? What's the middle ground to give everybody what they're looking for here?
There is no middle ground to give everyone what they're looking for. You have to just make a choice about what you want to do. Back when they used to do these, where they had all 10 fighters, this was a bit of a throwback, by the way, to have all 10 like that for the event. They used to do that more commonly back in the day, and that made more sense when there weren't that many podcasts, there weren't that many shows. There was no social media, or very little anyway, and you just didn't have much access to fighters. This was your chance to really get a chance to talk to them, check in with them. But now all that shit seems completely outdated. You don't need any of this for any of that.
Because everybody's been on a million podcasts.
So this is a way to get the fans jazzed, to get some highlights, to get some content. So what's the answer? The answer is have the fans ask them questions. That's the I keep saying this. Have the fucking fans.
But won't that get? I'm trying to devil's advocate this. Won't that get more in the direction of what you don't like? More sort of bullshit things?
It's already there. The whole thing is fake news. We're already there.
We all know what it really is. It's a commercial for the pay-per-view.
That's it.
So how would you better frame that commercial for the pay-per-view so that everybody wins, including
everybody can't win? It's not.
So there's not a way that can be held under its larger pretenses that would satisfy you.
Well, for my media desires, yes, but not for the fans' desires. I'm not the dude. If you're doing the job correctly, if you're doing the media job correctly, you're not doing it based off fan service. That's not what the job is. Now, I know we do that all the time, but that's really not the fucking job. We do it because that's where the money is, but that's not the job. So if you're doing an actual press conference, then just have the fucking press there. But if you're going to do this as like a Jerry Springer episode where people are saying, don't talk about my mama and chucking chairs at each other and shit, that's what then get the fans involved. Dude, they're already fucking there. They'll ask all this. What question did the media ask today that any fan in attendance couldn't have asked? Obviously, Oscar and Jose are better at this, and they can polish it up, and they'll be quicker, and they know how to talk on the mic better, and all that kind of stuff. That's fine. But be serious. And I have these conversations. I have these conversations with these guys privately all the time about it. There was nothing asked today that someone in the fans in the stands couldn't ask. This is a waste of time.
I feel like it would be even more of a shit show, but at least there are a few credible journalists who are asking actual questions related to the fight. But you may have a good point. Like, think about where we were as media members just 6 years ago. To interview somebody, you had to have access to a studio, more or less, right? To interview somebody and put it out on video.
Like, I mean, really good.
Unless you're at the event doing guerrilla style, but like,
which UFC has killed that off too.
Right. It used to be you needed a studio access, and now obviously, especially with Zoom, or anything equivalent to that, it's just as easy as that. So, do you feel like fighters are almost overexposed to this point?
Totally overexposed.
That this is completely meaningless unless you're a casual fan going, "Oh, who's fighting on this? I want to see it."
Well, okay, so some fighters are underexposed in the sense that they don't get the media that they should. A guy like Beneil Dariush or something. But yeah, this is all of this. Dude, this is today is a pageant.
Yeah, it was a shit show pageant.
It's a pageant. It's a shit show pageant. That's the best.
I guess my middle ground is I'm willing to take the shit if I get, as a journalist who wants to be entertained but also wants us to not be a complete train wreck, if I get like the trash talk that plays into the fight and gets you more fired up, I feel like everybody wins in that regard. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Like a one that, we've seen some rowdy crowds based on who's in the main event, right?
Yeah.
Rowdy crowds that won't even let the journalists be heard. They're just like, I don't hate that when it's all playing into.
Here's what's basically happening. Like, they've done the thing where they've gone to the fans and then they ask the questions, and the fans will ask like real insulting shit, And I don't think the fighters want to put up with that or deal with that. So they get the media to kind of sanitize the process. But that's not the media's fucking job. That's not what they're there for. So you could do it where John Anik kind of pitches them questions.
Okay, so like a hybrid.
Like Brian Custer does for Showtime. He sort of hosts, or Ariel did for Jake Paul and Anderson Silva. Like, that's the thing you could do where you don't get kind of that same stuff. But just the way they do it now, to me, the whole thing is like, it's so obvious what it's all about. And asking the media to like tap dance for it, it's like, I don't, I'm not interested in playing that role.
Like, I'd rather come on here in this studio over the river from that event and just make fun of it.
This is much better. You can't tell me this isn't much better than having gone and listened to that bullshit.
Yeah, I don't know if we would have gained much at the end, but frustration and probably COVID. That's probably,
probably some communicable diseases.
Yeah. Well, there you go. UFC 281 is going to go down Saturday night on pay-per-view, whether you enjoyed this stream or not. And Morning Combat is going to be with you all week on the ground here in Jersey City, a stone's throw from Madison Square Garden. If you missed out today, we'll hit you with a live Morning Combat today on Wednesday. Check that out. We're setting the storylines. We're getting pumped up. Then we had Chuck Mindenhall here on this couch for a live pregame preview. Quick explanation before we close here. YouTube has changed the way things are laid out. So we're getting a lot of messages from people saying, hey, that episode you just did, where'd it go? There's tabs, right? There's a home, which has all your traditional episodes there.
Yes.
There's live, which has anything like this.
Video where you went live. And then it has normal videos.
Shorts.
Well, it has normal videos. Anything like, hey, I made a 15-minute video arguing why Weili Zhang is the best fighter ever. And you post it. That has one silo. There's another silo for live. And then there's a third silo for shorts. Now, there's other ones, too, for playlists, community, that kind of thing. But videos all used to be under just video. Now they're split apart into shorts, live, and then regular uploaded videos.
So once you get adjusted, it'll seem easier. But whether you're on your phone or on a laptop or whatever, that's the way to do it. Don't miss our content, youtube.com/morningcombat. Luke's lengthy and educational sit-down with Israel Adesanya. I chatted with Carla Esparza. We're going to have more surprises and bonuses as this week goes on. And a reminder, Saturday evening during UFC 281, whether you're buying the pay-per-view or not, we've got second string coverage. We have a live Morning Combat companion. Get a little alcohol going. Post-fight show afterwards. It's time for Luke to sit in his favorite chair, number 8. on that airline that we all love.
Gonna take a flight home, if you know what I'm saying.
For Luke Thomas, my name is Brian Campbell. Whatever goes down, we're going to be here for you this week. So get fired up. 281 UFC at MSG. It still matters to your boy BC. And that's it, Luke. Any final like noises, like deep grunts that just?
Can we end this?
Like, okay, sorry, we're out of here. It's like it was a weird ending. It's pretty weird. To be fair, it's pretty weird. Yeah, it's pretty. All right. Is that
My mouth shut for 25 years.
Now that you're back, I want you to go to Tulsa.
Not exactly the welcome I was expecting. What crew runs this neighborhood?
No crew up in here. We're in the middle of nowhere.
I'll protect you from the gangs.
What gangs?
Sit down!
You got a pretty good appetite for someone who was just shot at.
Tulsa King. New series streaming November 13th, exclusively on Paramount Plus.
I love Montana, but I'm doing this for our family.
They will fight you dirty.
Is there any other way?
Ruin them, starting with her.
Signing this is a declaration of war.
We're already at war.
I do this for my father. I don't do this for me.
We give everything to this land, and I do mean everything.
Yellowstone 2-hour premiere event, Sunday at 8 on Paramount Network.